The hearing of the Subcommittee on Energy will come to order. Good morning, and welcome to today's joint hearing entitled The Future of Nuclear Energy. In front of each member are packets containing the written testimony, biographies, and truth and testimony disclosures for today's witnesses. And before I give an opening statement, I would like to say that it's been my pleasure for the past 2 years to serve on a committee that is chaired and by one of the most distinguished members of Congress, who has been the type of chairman that every member of Congress hopes that they'll have the opportunity to serve with and under. Lamar Smith is a gentleman's gentleman and has been one of the most wonderful people that a subcommittee chairman could have the opportunity to tutor under. This committee has conducted, I believe, 87 hearings during the course of the last 2 years under Chairman Smith's leadership. And we've done it in a manner that has been respectful, that has sought information, allowed us to be better advocates, and more knowledgeable members of Congress. So I would like to start, before I give my opening statement, to take this opportunity to thank Chairman Smith for his leadership, his mentorship, and for his many years in Congress, from which all of us who have worked with him and under him have benefited.
Will the gentlelady yield?
I will yield.
I've got to get ahead of our chairman here. I just want to say ditto.
You all are nice. Would the chair yield just for a minute?
The chair will yield.
I just want to thank Cynthia Lummis for being an outstanding subcommittee chairman. We will miss her, but always support her in her other committee assignments. And she has not only been an outstanding chair, she has been an outstanding member of Congress. She is knowledgeable, she is conscientious, she is thoughtful, she is diplomatic, but she is also strong. And those qualities have made Cynthia Lummis one of the outstanding members of Congress that we have today. So, Cynthia, thank you very much for all you've done. And thanks for spreading good rumors about me.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The members of this committee, which will participate under your leadership during the next Congress, are fortunate indeed to have you as their leader and mentor. Well, good morning, and I would like to welcome our witnesses for today's hearing. Today we'll look at the track record and road forward for research and development within DOE's Office of Nuclear Energy. We will also look at progress of nuclear energy technology in the United States and the regulatory environment for licensing new reactors. Nuclear power currently accounts for approximately 19% of the United States electricity generation and 60% of our emission-free electricity. And my home state of Wyoming is the nation's largest producer of uranium. Nuclear energy is reliable, resilient, and has safely powered America for decades. But the fundamental questions about the future of this technology need to be answered. When will we see the commercialization of small modular nuclear reactors that can be deployed at off-grid locations? Something of particular interest, I might say, from me, coming from the most sparsely populated state in the United States. When will we see deployment of advanced reactors that can reach much higher levels of thermal efficiency, recycle nuclear waste, and serve as hybrid energy systems? And what are the regulatory and market barriers slowing down the progress of these technologies in the United States? As many of us know, the time frame for bringing a nuclear reactor online is unforgivably long, and so we must work together to make sure that we can make it more time sensitive. Nuclear energy was born in the United States. We have the best scientists and engineers in the world. We're fortunate to have some of them here today. Yet we're not seeing the pace of commercial technology advancement that we would expect. At the same time, other countries, including China, are surging ahead. We have to ask ourselves, is the United States going to remain a global leader in nuclear technology? these are the issues that we want to discuss today. I look forward to further discussion. And again, I thank the witnesses for participating in today's hearing. The chair now recognizes our ranking member, Mr. Swalwell, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Lummis. And first, I would also like to express my good wishes for you going forward. I have enjoyed working with you. You were very kind early on when we both were selected to lead our respective sides on this committee, on this subcommittee, and we met and we've talked about what our mutual interests are, I think especially in an all-of-the-above energy approach. And I do think you have led this committee every time with an open mind, with dignity, and it's something that I will miss, but I know that there's many great things ahead for what you'll do and the work you'll accomplish in the Congress. So thank you for just being so gracious. Even during contentious hearings, you never cease to allow both sides to be heard, and you were always open, I think, to whatever ideas were out there that could move our country forward, and I really do appreciate that.
Thank you. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes.
I, too, want to acknowledge what a proper and important and dignified and lovely working relationship that I've had with the ranking member. Mr. Swalwell has been a breath of fresh air, and we are good partners on this committee, and I have very much enjoyed our working relationship, and my very best to you.
Yeah, and Chair, I'll never forget you asked me one time during a meeting, I told you I believe when it comes to energy, if we can make it safe, we should make it happen. And you looked me in the eye and you said, do you really believe that? And I said, yes, I do. And you said, I'm going to put the screws to you on that and hold you to that. And you have, and I appreciate that. And I hope we can find more ways where we both believe we can make it safe, we can make it happen. And speaking of making it safe and making it happen, with respect to today's hearing, for decades the federal government has provided critical support for energy R&D. And from solar and wind to natural gas recovery, many of the technologies that are helping us transition to a clean energy economy and creating entire new industries wouldn't be nearly as long as they are today, or would not exist without the benefit of the partnerships between the federal government and public and semi-public partnerships and entities. I look forward to learning more today about nuclear energy, particularly from our witness from NuScale Power, who we'll be hearing from today, who has been working with Sandia National Laboratory, which is located in Livermore, California, in the 15th Congressional District, which I have the privilege to represent. This morning, we are here to discuss the federal role in the development and deployment of the next generation of nuclear power plants, and how this support may be better structured going forward. I'm eager to learn about the costs and benefits of these new technologies over the course of the hearing, including ways we can improve the safety of new reactors to minimize the chance of another catastrophic event along the lines of the disaster that occurred at the Fukushima plant just a few years ago. I've stated a number of times, as I just referenced, that I believe and support an all of the above, if we can make it safe, we should make it happen approach to clean energy and achieving a safer, more cost-effective, and environmentally friendly way to utilize nuclear energy, and how that can play an important role in this mix. We just need to make sure that we are making the smartest investments we can with our limited, challenged resources, and that they are in the best interests of the American people. Again, I want to thank the witnesses, particularly Dr. Lyons today, for being willing to provide their insights, and I look forward to working with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle and with all the stakeholders in this critical area moving forward. Again, thank you, Chairman Lummis, and I yield back.
I now recognize the chairman of the full committee for a statement.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Today's hearing will examine both current and future challenges and opportunities that face nuclear power. Nuclear power is a proven source of emission-free electricity that has been generated safely in the United States for over half a century. However, our ability to move from R&D to market deployment has been hampered by government red tape and partisan politics. We are just now seeing the first reactors under construction in more than 30 years. This hiatus has diminished our supply chain and ability to build new reactors. In fact, the United States no longer has the capability to manufacture large reactor pressure vessels. Today we will hear from NuScale, a company that is the closest to navigating the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's licensing process to build and deploy the first small modular reactors in the United States, a subject that our colleague Dana Rohrbacher has long been interested in. We will also hear from Transatomic, a company recently formed by 2 graduate students from MIT that could revolutionize the energy sector. Transatomic's technology would recycle spent nuclear fuel, achieve higher levels of efficiency than existing designs, and yield minimum radioactive byproducts. The U.S. has not lived up to its potential when it comes to nuclear energy. The regulatory process is cumbersome and lacks the certainty needed for sustained investment in new nuclear energy technology. I am hopeful that this hearing can serve as a forum for how to enable nuclear power to meet more of our energy needs. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yield back.
I thank the Chairman. If there are members who wish to submit additional opening statements, your statement will be added to the record at this point. It is now time to introduce our first witness panel. Our first witness today is the Honorable Peter Lyons, Assistant Secretary for the Office of Nuclear Energy at the Department of Energy. Dr. Lyons previously served as Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Office of Nuclear Energy. Prior to joining DOE, Dr. Lyons was a Commissioner of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission focusing on safety and operating reactors. As our witnesses should know, spoken testimony is limited to 5 minutes each, after which members of the committee have 5 minutes each to ask questions. Your written testimony will be included in the record of the hearing. So, without further ado, I now recognize our witness, Dr. Lyons.
Thank you very much. Chairman Lummis, Ranking Member Swalwell, and members of the committee, thank you for your invitation to testify at the committee's hearing today on the future of nuclear energy. Nuclear energy continues to play a vital role in President Obama's all-of-the-above energy strategy for a sustainable clean energy future. Nuclear energy has provided nearly 20% of our electrical generation over the past 2 decades and now produces over 60% of our zero-carbon electricity. In order for nuclear energy to continue this role, the Office of Nuclear Energy, or NE, focuses on programs to improve the reliability, performance, and operating lifetime of current reactors, support the deployment of affordable advanced reactors, develop a sustainable nuclear fuel cycle, maintain key infrastructure, and manage international collaborations. The current light water reactor, or LWR fleet, is challenged by economic conditions that contributed to the early closure of 4 reactors in 2013, in addition to the imminent retirement of the Vermont Yankee plant. The shutdown of these power plants is a significant loss of low-carbon electricity. Nevertheless, we remain optimistic with the current construction of 5 nuclear reactors, 4 of which are the Westinghouse AP1000, a new generation of passively safe reactors. 2 of these plants received over $6 billion in loan guarantees, and for future assistance, the Department recently released a $13 billion loan guarantee solicitation for advanced nuclear energy projects. In conjunction with industry, and where appropriate, the NRC, the LWR Sustainability Program supports the current fleet for possible license renewals beyond 60 years. And this program also addresses the lessons learned from the Fukushima Daiichi accident. A high priority of the Department is to accelerate the commercialization and deployment of small modular reactors, or SMRs, with our cost-shared licensing technical support program. SMRs can promote American competitiveness, create domestic manufacturing jobs, and help reduce CO2 emissions. The 2 small modular LWRs supported by the Department feature extremely impressive passive safety. Future reactor systems may employ advanced designs to improve performance beyond what is currently available. Coolants other than light water may enable reactors to operate at higher temperatures with improved efficiencies and economics, as well as optimize their waste forms. The Department has supported industrial R&D on these advanced reactor designs through cost-shared agreements, as well as supported R&D at national labs and universities. In addition, we also continue to leverage international experience through the Generation 4 International Forum. Progress towards a consent-based solution to managing the nation's nuclear waste and used fuel remains a challenge that must be addressed. In January 2013, the administration released its strategy for this task. And pursuant to that strategy, my office is undertaking activities within its existing authority to plan for the eventual transportation, storage, and disposal of used nuclear fuel, as well as R&D on related topics. By way of conclusion, any programs encompass all aspects of nuclear power, including support for the nation's 100 operating LWRs, which remain a vital national resource of safe, clean energy. But new plants are also needed. Past programs, like the cost-shared NP 2010 program, provided 2 certified designs for passively safe, large LWRs. And in an analogous way, our current licensing technical support program strives to provide design certification for 2 SMRs. If we are successful with that program, the nation will have 2 complementary approaches to new plant construction, well matched to the wide range of our domestic needs, as well as addressing international markets. In planning for future advanced reactors, it's appropriate to remember the words of Hyman Rickover when he discussed the differences between paper and real reactors. He noted the challenges in bringing a new reactor design online are substantial and are hard to fully anticipate as the project is planned. His words are not a reason to forego development of advanced reactors, but they should remind us of the challenges inherent in such endeavors, even though several of the advanced concepts have some operational history. In the United States, we have comprehensive knowledge of LWRs. We can design and regulate them with the highest confidence for safe operations. Today's advanced concepts will be deployed only if they are based on the same confidence that we have today for LWRs. Research today should focus on providing that level of confidence for these new concepts for tomorrow. To use advanced reactors in the future, we need to maintain a strong domestic nuclear energy industry, including utilities, with operational experience on nuclear systems. In the near term, the latest generation of LWRs and the promising new SMRs must serve as an essential bridge between the reactors of today and the future potential for new reactor designs. And without that bridge, any path towards non-light water reactors will be challenging. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
I thank the witness for his testimony. I'll remind the members that committee rules limit questions to 5 minutes, and the chair at this point will open the questioning. Now, I want to set this up, Dr. Lyons, to see if I understand this correctly. The Energy Policy Act of 2005 established the Next Generation Nuclear Plant Project. And as I understand that, it was to develop a prototype reactor for an eventual hybrid energy system. And it was supposed to be accomplished through cost-shared R&D, as well as design, construction, and operation on behalf of the Alliance. Now, is that a quick summary, an accurate summary of the Next-Gen Nuclear Plant Project? Okay. Then it's also my understanding that DOE and the Next-Gen Nuclear Plant Alliance have reached somewhat of an impasse over cost-share distribution, that the Alliance is asking the department to front-load its portion of cost share, while DOE maintains a cost share at 50-50 throughout, going, from day one until it comes online. I understand also that there have been some successes thus far in this program, including the development of TRISO fuel. So I'm very interested in knowing, is there an impediment for DOE to exercise its authority to host, for example, private development of prototype reactors at a DOE site?
Thank you for those questions, all very good ones, and there's several different questions inherent in what you just asked. Your description of NGNP, I believe, is accurate. Very successful R&D has been conducted on that program. You mentioned the TRISO fuel. We now have very high confidence in our ability to produce TRISO fuel to the highest standards, and TRISO fuel is capable of withstanding extremely high temperatures in any accident scenario. It is an incredibly robust type of fuel which we believe can have applications in many, many future systems. There's other areas of strong research for NGNP. Other areas of strong research that were conducted as part of NGNP. Now, you're also quite right that as we came to the point in our R&D programs where it became feasible to look towards actually moving ahead with a demonstration reactor, we asked our advisory committee to evaluate the status of the research. At the same time, we were discussing with the NGNP Alliance their interest in moving ahead. I might note that when we started the NGNP program, there were a number of studies which pointed out the cost efficiency of this approach for gas greater than $8. And when we started NGNP, and I have to admit I was one of the co-authors of the language, when we started that program, gas was way over $8. Yeah. At the time we got close to being able to move towards a developmental program, that was definitely not the case. Mm-hmm. And while when we initially wrote the language, there was very strong interest from industry in looking towards the 50-50 cost share, as we moved towards the point in time when we could have started into development, as you described correctly, their interest was in the DOE front-loading the expenses, and they would pick it up later if they deemed appropriate. That is not my understanding of the congressional intent on cost sharing as written in EPACT 05. And furthermore, to accomplish what they would have suggested would have taken essentially the entire R&D budget of my office simply for NGNP. So we have continued the research on the TRISO fuels, the graphites. We've continued to work with and even to some extent support the NGNP Alliance as they look towards possible opportunities in the future. But this question of what is the appropriate cost share certainly could be the subject of more discussion within Congress, and exactly how the intent was to formulate that cost share. But in my mind, it is important to have strong industry support, as evidenced by cost share, before one moves ahead to actually build a prototype reactor of any of these. You also, right at the end, asked the possibility of utilizing, I think you said DOE sites in moving ahead with advanced reactors. I think that's also a subject of great interest. We can just certainly discuss it further. I'm not aware of any fundamental impediments to that. There would be a number of challenges, and I think we could talk through what those challenges might be if you wish.
Yeah, I would like to go there. Can you tell? Oops, my time has expired. That went really fast. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do think that I will recognize Ms. Bonamici for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you for allowing me to join you this morning, even though I'm on the full committee, not on the subcommittee. I wanted to be with you today, especially because of Mr. McGough from NuScale. But thank you so much, Dr. Lyons, for being here. I wanted to ask you, the Energy Policy Act of 2005 created, of course, the next generation nuclear plant project, along with timelines for completing each of the project's 3 phases. Apparently there have been some barriers that have arisen. Can you just talk a little bit about the reasons for the delays in that project? And then I want to save time for another question as well.
Well, thank you for the question. I think I tried to address some of that on the previous questions. I think the research on NGNP has gone extremely well. We have made dramatic progress. But as I indicated, at the time NGNP was formulated, there were many studies saying $8 gas was the break-even point. We don't have $8 gas today, and we are way below the break-even point. I also just alluded to the, I'd say, difference in opinion between the NGNP Alliance and me, my office, on what it means to cost share. Their proposal was that we construct the reactor and they would, and I'm paraphrasing this greatly, but we would construct the reactor and that they would decide later if they wished to build the actual systems. operational systems, and that over the long run, one would achieve a 50-50 cost share. My understanding of EPACT, I think it's Section 988 perhaps, of EPACT, was that a cost share means a continual cost share over the life of a program. Now, that could be subject to interpretation and certainly further evaluation by Congress. I hope that's at least a bit of an answer.
Yes, thank you for expanding on that. And then Mr. Swalwell, in his opening remarks, talked about the issue of safety, which of course our constituents are concerned about as well. I represent a district out in the Northwest where we spend a lot of time talking about resilience and what will happen where we have the Cascadia subduction zone off our coastline, and we are having a lot of conversations about how we deal with the eventual earthquake and tsunami. So can you talk a little bit about the lessons that the department has learned from the Fukushima disaster, what work is being done, not necessarily just in siting, but in structure, to make sure that there is that preparation for sites in areas like the Northwest where there will eventually be earthquakes and tsunamis?
Thank you for that question as well. If I were to start with the lessons, well, I could talk for days on the lessons of Fukushima. However, if I were to start with the single most important lesson, it was on the importance of having an independent regulator. Japan did not have an independent regulator like the NRC. While I was at the NRC, there were many advances that were made in U.S. plants, for example, to respond to a station blackout. We shared that information with the Japanese regulator at that time. The Japanese regulator did not elect to make those requirements on Japanese plants. Japan has now moved to an independent regulator away from their previous system where their regulator was part of METI, and the I in METI is industry. So number one lesson, have an independent regulator. We have one, and I was proud to serve with the NRC. In terms of lessons from the actual events at Fukushima, certainly the NRC has evaluated those, but I think it's also fair to say that our plants are extremely well prepared because of any number of requirements that we had demanded of the nuclear industry. But specific areas of research on which we've expanded post-Fukushima, one would be so-called accident-tolerant fuels. The current generation of fuel systems uses zirconium cladding. Under accident conditions, that generates hydrogen. When you have too much hydrogen, things blow up. And that took a very bad day at Fukushima Daiichi into an absolute crisis. We believe it is possible to come up with a new generation of fuel systems that would greatly minimize the production of hydrogen under an accident scenario. That's been very well supported in Congress, about $60 million a year. We are making dramatic progress. Introducing a new fuel system is a big deal in the nuclear industry, and it's going to take more than a decade to do this. But we are making good progress. There are good ideas, and it is my hope that we will start testing probably in 2018 on the initial. We'll make some down selects in 2016. We'll have the first transient testing in 2018 for accident-tolerant fuels. And if we can develop that, that will be another significant step forward. But on other points, and I'm sorry I'm probably taking too much time here, you mentioned an interest in NuScale and the small modular reactors. The fact that NuScale and any of the SMRs that we're interested in are sited underground gives them substantially more seismic resistance. In addition, the design of the NuScale plant increases, it's a long word, the probabilistic risk assessment of the plant. The probability of an accident is many decades lower in the NuScale design. That plant is dramatically safer than our existing plants, which are already very safe. And again,
terrific. I look forward to hearing from Mr. McGough about that. My time has expired, and thank you again, Madam Chairwoman.
I thank the gentlelady and yield to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me continue following up on that same subject that was mentioned by the chair a few minutes ago, that is to say the cost. But on the way there, Dr. Lyons, thank you for your encouraging remarks. You're being very positive. You're talking about how we can improve things for the future, and that's what this hearing is all about. We have been told that sometimes it costs up to $1 billion to get through the our NRC's licensing process. Is there any way to reduce the cost of that? I guess I have several questions. Is there any way to reduce the cost? Is there any way to streamline the process? Is there any way to make it easier to construct safe nuclear reactors in the future?
Thank you for that question. And again, many ways I could answer that question. The $1 billion number is frequently used, but let's remember that that billion is far more than just the actual work done by the NRC. In order, under Part 52, the new licensing approach at the NRC, the vendor, in NuScale, if you want to use them as an example, has to prepare a very complete design. They have to go way into the engineering details of the plant in order to answer all of the questions from the NRC under Part 52. Now, under Part 52, the goal is that you end up with a certified design. And once you have that certified design, as long as you stay with it, then you don't go back through the safety analysis again. And that's believed to be a very effective way of advancing nuclear power in this country.
So part of the cost is the design, which they'd have to do anyway. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Okay. And I think it's fair that when we talk about $1 billion that we recognize that that's included. But at the end of the game, you end up with success with a certified design that then you can take to any site in the country and not go back through the safety analysis.
Okay, and let me follow up again on those other questions. I think it takes close to, 5 years to get through the regulatory process now? I'm not sure how many years, that's what I've read, but how can we expedite the process? It just seems to me that if we're trying to accomplish the good designs, if we're trying to increase nuclear energy, there's bound to be a way to try to actually encourage companies to go that direction and to not unduly prolong the process.
As the NRC has evaluated the SMR designs, they have published a schedule of 39 months that they intend to follow once an application is filed. That remains to be tested, and I'm certainly hoping they will succeed. You asked what could possibly be done to improve that. I would note that NuScale, as one of the SMRs that we're supporting, has taken advantage of the so-called pre-licensing process, in which they can submit white papers to the NRC on specific design aspects and gain comments back from the NRC. I think that's a very effective way of perfecting a design. If you ask me for one possible improvement in that, right now the NRC delivers an informal opinion on those white papers. I think one could imagine that it could be even more useful to companies like NuScale or Empower if it was a formal decision. And that might be a question that you address to NuScale.
How much time would that save?
Well, I think what it would do would be to provide far more confidence to a vendor that what they have submitted in a white paper and had some pre-analysis is actually going to be accepted. Right now, there's 30 or more white papers that are put in. They've got comments on all of them, but they don't have the confidence that there won't be a change later when the commission evaluates it. Again, this is just a suggestion, and certainly would be appropriate to discuss with NuScale and with the NRC.
Okay. And is this a subject that you are discussing with the NRC? You have some control over what they do. Are you encouraging them to expedite the process and reduce the cost if it's possible?
Well, we continue to have frequent interactions with the NRC on all of our programs, and can keep them as informed as we can on the directions that we're going, and we're asking how our research can help them. Yeah.
I guess I'm looking to see if you will go beyond just keeping them informed and actually try to spur them to take some steps to reduce the cost and the time involved with the licensing process.
The reason I'm giving you a delicate answer is they are an independent agency. They highly value their independence. I know that, having served there. And I think one probably wants to be a little bit judicious in how strongly one makes suggestions that could be interpreted as undermining their independence.
Well,
And I just made the comment, too, about the importance of an independent regulator as avoiding a Fukushima, too.
Yeah,
So
but
it is important.
But independent agencies need oversight and suggestions as well, so.
And certainly, that's, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Lyons. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The chair now recognizes another member of the Texas delegation, Mr. Vesey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to talk with you a little bit about the stages for licensing advanced reactors. We've received testimony that there should be stages of review by the NRC, similar to how the FDA has 3 phases of review before a new drug is allowed to go out onto the marketplace. The argument is that this would provide much earlier and a clearer signal to investors that a new nuclear technology is meeting or failing criteria set by the NRC. As a former NRC commissioner, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, thank you for that question. And I would go back to my comment of just a few minutes ago on the pre-licensing reviews. I think those are an extremely effective way of a company testing the waters, if you will, starting to raise appropriate questions with the NRC and gaining feedback from the staff. Now, this also the suggestion I made just a minute ago was I think it would be worth discussing with the NRC whether to carry that a little bit further, and instead of just a staff opinion that comes back, maybe asking that that opinion have a little bit more weight, so that the a potential vendor would have more confidence that if they stay with a particular design aspect, that it will be accepted by the Commission later on. So I think that's at least an approach towards the question you've asked.
Thank you very much. As far as the commercialization of advanced reactors, again, what do you believe are the necessary components of a public-private partnership that can ultimately take these advanced reactors from the lab to the marketplace?
At least one example has been the NP 2010 program, highly successful program that Congress supported for a number of years, which was cost-shared with both Westinghouse and GE and has led to 2 certified designs. We're trying to do exactly the same thing with the small modular reactors. We may get to the point where there's sufficient maturity of some of the non-light water designs that it would be that Congress might want to consider that in the future. In any case, my point would be that the cost-shared work towards design certification has already proven to be very successful. In the case of NP 2010, in the case of the SMRs, at present we have not asked for support beyond the design certification, anticipating that at that point there's sufficient information for industry to make their own decisions, and of course the loan guarantee program that the department has also can assist in this. Whether one can go still further, one could, if that were deemed appropriate from a congressional standpoint, and certainly costs would escalate appropriately.
What about steps that commercial vendors and utilities need to take to ensure their ability to accept advanced reactor technology as part of their energy portfolio?
I think part of that answer will be addressed by Dan Lipman in his testimony on the next panel. I found his testimony very interesting, where he notes that industry has formed a working group now devoted to advanced reactor technologies. That is somewhat analogous to what they did during the time when we were working on design certification of the Westinghouse and GE reactors. They have a similar model that they're using now on the small modular reactors. And I think in general, having industry organized to explore their own interest in any particular reactor design is highly advantageous.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. I yield back my time.
I thank the gentleman. Recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Weber.
Thank you. Dr. Lyons, as you know, the United States is engaged in ongoing climate negotiations with the UN. Final agreement expected in Paris 2015. Do you believe that the benefits of nuclear power should be specifically recognized in the UNFCCC agreement to be reached in Paris?
I guess I would answer, Mr. Weber, that certainly the benefits of clean energy need to be recognized. Whether nuclear needs to be called out specifically in that, I don't have an opinion. There are many, many studies showing that in order to achieve the clean energy desired in the future, that nuclear will be a significant part.
Do you know of any other energy as reliable and capable of producing the kind of megawatts necessary as nuclear energy?
Well, that's why any of the studies that I'm referencing, for example, the recent World Energy Outlook from the International IEA, International Energy Agency, notes the importance of a strong nuclear component looking into the future for exactly that reason.
So that's kind of a roundabout way of saying yes.
Well, again, I'm saying I don't think you can achieve what we need without nuclear, but I also think...
But I mean the importance of recognizing it in the agreement reached in Paris.
The only reason I'm hesitating, sir, is that different communities, different regions, different countries are going to have different mixes of power appropriate to whatever their situation is.
Yeah, but let's focus on the United States, though. Do you think emissions, let me back up. What role do you think will nuclear play in meeting global emissions targets that we could expect in the agreement in Paris? I mean, we've already talked about 60% of the energy with basically zero emissions, so would you expand on that a little bit for us?
Well, I would just again note that any study I've seen, and I happen to reference the World Energy Outlook that was published just recently, certainly notes that nuclear is going to have to play a strong role as we look forward into to reach the goals that are
sure.
required.
So that's to say that you don't believe those targets could be reached without nuclear when you say it has to play a strong role.
I believe that is true, and that is consistent with the President's all-of-the-above strategy.
Do you know if the new Green Climate Fund for international mitigation efforts can be used to support nuclear projects?
I do not know, sir.
Okay. Do you believe it should be used to support nuclear projects? Noting your earlier comments that you can't reach those targets without nuclear.
I know so little about that fund that I hesitate, sir. I mean, in general, yes, I think nuclear should be recognized for its clean energy.
But you do get paid to work. You do get the money, right? So you know a little bit about money. And so if we've got dollars being spent for a green climate fund, and nuclear is you said you can't reach that target without nuclear. Doesn't it make sense that some of that fund should perhaps be used to support nuclear projects?
Again, I'm not sufficient. Nuclear is going to be a part of a future solution. I don't know enough about that fund to give you a credible answer.
Well, it's dollars for green climate fund, and it seems like we ought to be including nuclear in that. Let's change over to Yucca Mountain for a second. In a letter to NRCC Chairman McFarlane dated November 18th, 2014, from Senator Patty Murray, she stated, over the last 30 years, independent studies have pointed to Yucca Mountain as the nation's best option for a nuclear repository for high-level waste. At the same time, Congress and every previous administration have voted for, funded, and supported pursuing this option. The recent completion of Volume 3 of the SER reaffirms that Yucca Mountain is the right solution for the United States. End quote. Do you agree with Senator Murray?
The fact that the SER Volume 3 stated the safety from a post-closure standpoint of Yucca Mountain is not a surprise. The Department submitted our application for Yucca Mountain in 2008. It doesn't change the fact that I believe strongly that Yucca Mountain is not a workable solution, and I'd be happy to go into that in as much detail as you'd like. I've spent a lot of my career involved with Yucca Mountain.
Are you familiar with the Waste Control Specialist site, low-level radiation, out in Andrews, Texas?
I visited them multiple times.
Okay, what's the difference between low-level radiation and high-level radiation, notwithstanding the obvious? When you use fuel rods, for example, we expend most of them, and I understand France has a method for reclaiming a lot of that energy. What's the difference between low-level waste and high-level waste? Can you expand on that? And I'm out of time, but if you could do that quickly.
In this country, we have a definition of high-level waste that refers to its use in a reactor and ties it to used fuel. However, a simpler definition is simply, as you said, it's kind of obvious. One is low and one is high-level radiation. As far as France, And we could talk about France a great deal if you want in future.
But when you use fuel in nuclear reactors, do we not try to use up all of that energy, all of that fuel?
With our current generation of light water reactors, we come nowhere close to using the full energy content of the fuel resource.
Okay.
That is one of the advantages of advanced reactors.
Okay, thank you. I'll yield back. Thank you.
I thank the gentleman. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Swalwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Lyons, as you know, I represent Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory and Sandia National Laboratory in Livermore, California. And while these labs do not work directly on nuclear energy, I know that Sandia, for example, played an important role in the accident response and after-accident analysis with respect to Fukushima. And I was hoping you could tell us about the role our national labs are playing to keep us safe, as well as how important it is that our national laboratory system advances science, Department of Energy, in how it is to advancing DOE utilizing our national labs to ensure that we're doing everything we can to keep existing reactors safe.
Thank you, Mr. Swalwell. There's no question that our national laboratories are an incredible national resource for science and technology. I make extensive use of all of the national laboratories in my program. Livermore is not one of the predominant ones. Sandia is. You mentioned Sandia's very strong capabilities in severe accident management and a number of other areas that are ongoing at Sandia, and I have extensive funding at Sandia. But in general, the national labs are a vital resource, and I make extensive use of them.
Great. And Mr. Lyons, I and many people in my district have strong concerns about the safety of nuclear energy, and I was hoping you could tell us about the research that the Department of Energy is conducting to improve existing technology and make our nuclear plants safer.
I first start with the accident-tolerant fuel program that I mentioned a little bit earlier. National labs, industry, and universities are heavily involved in the accident-tolerant fuels program, where we're seeking to develop a class of fuels that would ideally not emit hydrogen, at least emit far less hydrogen in an accident scenario. And it was the hydrogen explosions at Fukushima Daiichi that took a very bad situation into a catastrophe.
And Mr. Lyons, could you talk more about Sandia's nuclear accident modeling software, Melcor?
Melcor has been vital throughout the industry. I was over in Tokyo within days of Fukushima, as were leaders from the Sandia Severe Accident Program. Melcor was used extensively post-Fukushima. We continue to use Melcor. Melcor is the prime code used in this country for severe accidents, and both we and the NRC use it extensively.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Lyons, and I yield back the balance of my time.
I thank the gentleman. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Massey.
Madam Chair, I just want to say thank you, and thank you for letting me serve on your subcommittee. It's been a pleasure serving here for you and with you on the Oversight Committee. I will note that one of your questions went viral on YouTube the other day on oversight. If only we could get something in the Energy Subcommittee to go viral. Maybe we need to bring a working reactor here for that to happen. That might get it done. I've always been a supporter of an all-of-the-above energy plan, both publicly, in public life and in my private life. I started a company right off the MIT campus, and the directions to our company were take a right at the nuclear reactor and a left at the candy factory. So we were never worried about the safety of that. I was astounded. I looked up the cost of that nuclear reactor. It only cost $3 million to build that in 1956. Yeah, but even accounting for inflation, that was astounding. And there's something wrong about the price of nuclear energy right now, just the fact that it costs so much to build a new plant these days. In my personal life, I drive a Tesla. It's an electric car, but it has Friends of Coal license plates on it, just so people know where the energy comes from. To balance out the karma there, I live off the grid. I just add 3 kilowatts of solar panels to my 10 kilowatt array, and I used to work in an oil refinery. But I find it disturbing that the state of Kentucky has a moratorium on building any nuclear plants. And I think that's a problem. I think it's wrong. And I think it's to the detriment of the citizens of Kentucky, unfortunately. But, you know, there's sort of public opinion about this, and the elephant in the room here is what do we do with the nuclear waste? And I think Mr. Weber asked you earlier about Yucca Mountain, and that's sort of my question. We see trucks going through the district that have canisters that have nuclear material in them. What are we going to do about the nuclear waste? If the answer is not Yucca Mountain, what is the answer?
The administration published a strategy in January of 2013 based on the recommendations of the Blue Ribbon Commission.
What's your recommendation?
I think the Blue Ribbon Commission had fabulous suggestions to move ahead with a consent-based process, and I think that if there was a legislative basis to move ahead with a consent-based process. So
what does that mean for my constituents back home, consent-based process? What's the answer is what we want to know, and I only have 2 minutes, and I know it's more complicated than that.
I think consent basis means, frankly, exactly the opposite of the Yucca Mountain situation. I grew up in Nevada, worked at the test site, worked with Yucca Mountain, directed the research on Yucca Mountain. I know it rather well. But I also am well aware that the Nuclear Waste Policy Act amendments of '87 are viewed in Nevada as the Screw Nevada bill. There was never a consent basis in Nevada for Yucca Mountain, and it has led to to say it's polarized is putting it mildly. I think on a consent basis we would avoid that.
If nuclear energy is going to flourish and remain a viable option for us, we have to solve this problem. Do we have time to do this consent-based process? Or I'm sorry, consensus?
Well, I would submit that if we don't do a consent-based process, we will have great difficulties ever succeeding. So the current storage of the used fuel in pools and dry casks is safe, but there's no question that that's not a long-term solution. And eventually we need to move, I believe, as the Blue Ribbon Commission said, to centralized interim storage and to a repository, but doing it on a consent basis. And there are a number of communities, in some cases even states, that have expressed interest in being considered for housing such facilities. And I think if we tried on a consent basis, discussed how this can be done with the utmost attention to safety, I think we could succeed.
I think we have to succeed with doing something with the waste, because this is the elephant in the room. What are you going to do with it? And this is what drives public opinion, I think. I'm convinced that the safety issue has been solved, but clearly dealing with the waste has not been solved. Let me switch to a lighter topic, because I'd be remiss if you were here and I didn't get a chance to ask this question for my constituents who are always asking me about this. Does thorium have a place in our nuclear future?
We've evaluated thorium-based cycles many, many times. Given that we have made a massive commitment in this country to a uranium-based cycle, I see no compelling reason to move towards a thorium cycle.
If we weren't so heavily invested, though, in this path, does it make sense? I mean, does it make sense in other countries that...
If you're starting from scratch, I think one could make a decision to go either way. But some of the claimed advantages for thorium, which I hear frequently from people who would like us to put more money into thorium, such as that it is proliferation resistant, are simply false. There was a recent report done by the Nuclear Energy Agency of the OECD on thorium systems, which certainly made this point, that they're anything but proliferation resistant. Can you make them work? Yes, you can make them work. Is there an advantage to doing it? I haven't seen it.
Thank you very much. My time has expired.
I thank the gentleman. Recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Nagebauer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Dr. Lyons, according to recent reports from some of the NGO organizations, that there's a significant chance that nuclear power plants may close as a result of low natural gas prices and renewable energy subsidies. To what extent has DOE assessed those scenarios?
We have studied that, sir, in considerable detail. We are very concerned that the closure of any clean energy resource in the nation only complicates our eventual quest for an overall clean energy system. As we have evaluated the reasons for some of those closures and some of the economic pressures, we have yet to identify a federal lever that could be used to protect those plants. Most of what can be done is on a state basis, and there are widely publicized negotiations going on in a number of states, certainly Illinois and New York would be two very prominent, where there are negotiations at the state level that might involve power purchase agreements as one example, in order to keep marginally economic nuclear power plants online under the current market system. There also are efforts, for example, in PJM region to move towards a so-called capacity auction that would do a better job of valuing the attributes of nuclear, that it's always there, very reliable, highly resilient, very important in maintaining overall grid stability. Those are not attributes that are currently valued as perhaps they might be. And it's these questions of how the markets value nuclear power remains a complex issue, but I think that PJM in their region of the country are starting to ask these very important questions.
So I guess one of the questions is, do we have conflicting policy in some way where we are subsidizing other renewables and so making it difficult to actually have price discovery of what is the market for example, power, because we're distorting that in some ways with some of these subsidies?
Well, I think it's fair to note that there's a number of different factors that are entering into these questions. Certainly low natural gas prices, while a tremendous boon for the country, also are at least challenging to any of the clean energy systems. There's also flat or decreasing electrical demand in many parts of our country as more and more efficiency measures are coming into play. That too makes it very difficult. So there's a number of different stresses on the nuclear power plants, and particularly for the relatively small single unit sites, they are the ones under the greatest stress, and those are the ones that, as I indicated, that we've been discussing whether there's a direct federal action, and we haven't found it yet. We're still, if we find it, that would certainly be interesting.
So one of the things that I guess, and I'm always a little reluctant to point out France, but one of the things that they've done over the years, they have a pretty robust nuclear presence over there, and one of our opportunities to sit down with some of the people over there, and of course they recycle a lot of their nuclear waste, and to the point where they, as I understand it, I don't understand all of the science of it, but they reprocess a lot of the, and what they basically said is that we keep reprocessing and reprocessing and reprocessing, and so the volume ultimately that we dispose is much smaller. Is that something that the U.S. should be thinking about?
Well, first, we have robust programs looking at R&D on advanced reprocessing. Reprocessing certainly opens many questions, including nonproliferation and environmental ones. It's fair to say that the type of reprocessing that is done in France at Le Hague would not be licensed in the United States with the level of emissions that they have. It also would be somewhat misleading to say that they reprocess over and over. They reprocess once, go to MOX fuel, and then they are storing the MOX fuel. Now their eventual goal is to move towards fast reactors and closing the fuel cycle. They are a long ways from doing that, but they are going at least one step of reprocessing, and at least I think I've made the point that from our concerns would be both from an environmental and non-proliferation standpoint, which is why we have the research programs to continue to evaluate options looking into the future. And I think the country may at some point want to evaluate whether they want to move towards a closed cycle. But in my mind, that would be made after one has demonstrated a repository, because you need a repository whether it's an open or closed cycle. France still needs a repository. They're building one.
I thank the gentleman, and the chair, without objection, will recognize Mr. Rohrbacher from California for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, and let me congratulate you on a tour of duty here on this committee, and you have done us proud and served your country well by the leadership you provided, and we wish you all the luck, and we'll be working with you on your new assignment as well. So I am a bit disturbed by some of the directions that we're talking about today, and I know we've had this exchange before, and it just seems to me that when we talk about the development of next generation nuclear power plants, and as we're stepping forward, the words light water reactor continue to be part of the game. And I have been told by numerous engineers who are renowned engineers, people who know what they're doing, and who tell me that we now are capable of building nuclear power plants. For example, General Atomics has a plan for a high-temperature gas-cooled reactor that can be done, and then we have small modular reactors. These things can be done in various sizes, but yet, and that reactor would be, and I'm sure, and I've talked to other scientists and engineers about other approaches, and I don't know, you suggested that this thing about thorium is that some of the claims are not true, but there are a number of approaches that I've been told would eliminate the leftover waste problem, which is a huge challenge for us to overcome before the public is going to accept further investment into nuclear energy. But every time I hear about coming back with what will be built, again, it's light water reactors, aren't you? So the money that you're talking about now being expended will go to light water reactors, which have some of the same defects that we've experienced with Fukushima, I guess I'm not pronouncing it right, Fukushima. And I don't understand what's going on here. Why are we spending money to build basically reactors based on the same on the same concept that Fukushima was built on, and that we have been building ever since World War II?
Well, thank you for the question, sir, and there certainly could be many answers to that. The reactors that we have supported through the NP 2010 program, or that we're supporting through the SMR program, are certainly very, very different from Fukushima. They're dramatically safer than Fukushima, and we could certainly talk about those differences. However, they are light water reactors. I agree with you on that point. We have in this country, we have in the world, tremendous expertise on light water reactors. And I don't question that there will be, I hope, a time in the future when we do move towards advanced reactors. They appear, by advanced I mean non-light water.
Right.
There certainly are a number of attributes that we can list that they should be able to demonstrate. But I also think there's going to be more research required to get to that point. And as I said in my opening statement, I believe that the light water reactors for the foreseeable future will be a bridge between the industry of today and an industry of tomorrow that will be able to handle and utilize the advanced reactors. And I also, in some of the other comments, there was the reference to the working group being formed within the Nuclear Energy Institute to explore advanced reactors, which I think is also very important to get industry.
See, I don't see that as a bridge to anywhere else. What I see is this is a castle around the current establishment. I mean, what we've got is not a bridge to tomorrow, but a protection of the status quo. I mean, just your very analysis of what's going on here is we have so much expertise in the current system that it's look, protecting their jobs of people who now have that expertise and spent a lifetime developing it. There's something to be said to be humane to those people. But the fact is, we need to have a step forward. Human progress needs a nudge here away from, and I understand people are going to lose their jobs who don't know this the new type of way of producing electricity. It seems to me what we have, Madam Chairman, is a status quo of people who are credentialed. They spent their lifetime learning about it. They are expert. They can be put on consulting contracts, and they don't want to change the status quo. And that's why we don't ever come up with the money. We're coming up with a bridge, but we never come up with the money to get across the bridge.
I thank the gentleman.
Thank you very much.
By unanimous consent, the chair now recognizes the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to ask a question or two, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And thank you for serving on my committee, too, in this same committee. But Dr. Lyons, I'm a physician from Georgia. And as you know, Georgia Power Company is building the first licensed reactor that has been approved in, I guess, 3 or 4 decades. And it seems to me that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has been a huge hindrance for Georgia Power to be able to build this, and it's going to cost Georgians a tremendous amount of money. And it seems to me also that there should be a way for NRC and for DOE to have some basic schematic or pre-approved plans that could be put out there for companies like Georgia Power Company or any of the southern companies, or Duke Power, or any other power company in this country, to be able to go ahead without having to expend so much money to get approval and have all the stoppages that have occurred over and over again. For the name of peace, please, I beg of you to try to put together some way that the power companies can build these reactors. I'm a huge advocate of nuclear energy. And I want to see these advanced reactors, and as we go forward with the advanced reactors, the government can be a hindrance. That's what my friend from California was talking about. Is there any reason whatsoever that we cannot have some kind of a pre-approved schematic or pre-approved plans that NRC and DOE can approve, and we can put these, not only the current type reactors in place, but as well as the advanced reactors?
Well, thank you for your question, Mr. Brown. I can perhaps address some aspects of that, although the majority of your question really is appropriate for the NRC. However, as far as pre-approved plans, the Vogtle plant is being built on a pre-approved Part 52 design certified AP1000.
I understand that, but over and over again, NRC has caused a stoppage after stoppage after stoppage. And this kind of thing is going to cost Georgians a tremendous amount of money. How can we get through this?
Well, the idea of Part 52 is that once one has the design certification, that it will be built per the way it's spelled out in the design cert. To the extent that there's a departure from that, then the Georgia Power, in this case, has to go back to the NRC to ask whether whatever change is being made is acceptable. I know the NRC is working on ways to streamline this process. I don't know the details since it's over in the NRC now, and I'm quite removed from that. But I do believe that the overall Part 52 design certification approach is the best way for the country to move forward, to have certified designs where it's agreed upon up front exactly what's going to be built, build it, and then proceed to operate it.
Well, I promised the chairman I was not going to take a lot of time, and I appreciate your answer. And I beg of the NRC as well as DOE to let's make it so that we can build these nuclear plants, that we can develop the advanced reactors, and we can do so in a very cost-effective way without costing the taxpayers as well as ratepayers so much money. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I yield back.
I thank the witness for his valuable testimony, and the members of the committee may have additional questions. and we would ask you to respond to those in writing. So thank you, Dr. Lyons, and you are excused. And we will now move to our next panel. Now, let me give you a little notice about our schedule. It looks like we're going to have a vote series coming up in, 10 to 15 minutes possibly. We would like to expedite the efforts to hear what this second panel has to say. So we're going to move quickly into your testimony. This vote series is going to be long, and rather than hold you here at for waiting for us to return, we would like to hear your testimony and then invite you back early next year so we can ask you questions about the matters to which you will be testifying. So without further ado, it's time to introduce our second panel. Our first witness is Dr. Ashley Finan, Senior Project Manager of the Energy Innovation Project at the Clean Air Task Force. Dr. Finan manages the Advanced Nuclear Energy Project. I would like now to ask Ms. Bonamici to introduce our second witness.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman Lummis, for allowing me to participate in the hearing, and thank my colleagues on the subcommittee who have invited Mr. McGough. Thank you for being here. Mr. Swalwell and Mr. Veazey were kind enough to invite me to introduce you. And to Mr. McGough, thank you for your willingness to share your considerable knowledge on this issue. Mr. McGough is a 36-year veteran of the commercial nuclear industry. He's overseen the development of nuclear facilities around the globe. Now he's helping an innovative Oregon company develop a safer approach to nuclear power. NuScale Power is a leader in the developing field of small modular reactor, or SMR technology. It's based in Corvallis, Oregon. My colleagues in the Oregon delegation and I have supported NuScale's efforts to secure Department of Energy funding for their design development because we see their approach as offering a safer alternative to current reactor designs. I was pleased to see that the funding bill for fiscal year 15 includes programmatic funding at the DOE that supports NuScale's design development. Following the earthquake and tsunami in Japan in 2011, my constituents expressed serious concerns about safety issues, and I'm very proud to have an Oregon company working to develop a safe approach to this problem. And because I'm also on the Education Committee, I do want to point out that Oregon is home to the only research reactor operated primarily by undergraduate students. The Reed Research Reactor at Reed College since 1968 has 40 licensed students operating it. So, Mr. McGough, thank you for coming here from Oregon and for appearing before us today. I look forward to your testimony, and I yield back. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
I thank the gentlewoman. And our third witness is Dr. Leslie Dewan, co-founder and chief executive officer at Transatomic Power. Dr. Dewan was recently named one of Time Magazine's 30 People Under 30 Changing the World. Welcome, Dr. Dewan. Our final witness today is Dr. Daniel Lipman, Executive Director of Policy Development at the Nuclear Energy Institute. Now, as our witnesses should know, spoken testimony is limited to 5 minutes each. Hopefully, we will have time after the vote series to ask you some questions, but that remains to be seen, so we're going to play it by ear. Thank you so much, panel. Your written testimony will be included in the record of this hearing, so I now recognize our first witness, Dr. Finan. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Lummis, Ranking Member Swalwell, and distinguished members of this subcommittee. Thank you for holding this hearing and for giving me the opportunity to testify. My name is Ashley Finan, Project Manager for Energy Innovation at the Clean Air Task Force. Clean Air Task Force is a nonprofit environmental organization dedicated to catalyzing the development and deployment of low-emission energy technologies through research and analysis, public advocacy leadership, and partnership with the private sector. Climate change is an enormous challenge. To have the greatest chance of success, CATF's position is that we will need all of the low-carbon energy technologies available, including nuclear power. While nuclear technology has made big incremental improvements in the last decade and is suitable for deployment, it still faces obstacles. Advanced reactors can address those by reducing cost and construction time, enhancing safety, and better managing wastes. The U.S. has an exciting opportunity to continue to be a world leader in nuclear technology. We have some of the world's best innovators, a tremendous asset in the DOE and the National Lab System, investors ready to invest in advanced designs under the right conditions, and a regulator that is considered the global gold standard. As with any energy technology, the development and commercialization of advanced non-light water reactors requires a suite of supportive policies from early research through demonstration and adoption. I will focus on two elements that need more attention. First, a testing facility that would enable private companies to build prototypes in a DOE-supervised environment, and second, a clear and predictable regulatory pathway for licensing advanced reactors. Historically, the Atomic Energy Commission developed and demonstrated new reactors with full public funding on government sites. Since that level of public support was scaled back, the U.S. has not seen the successful commercialization of a major breakthrough in nuclear reactor technology, but that is not for lack of ideas. We need a new model that better incorporates private investment while taking advantage of the important role that DOE plays. A testbed facility at a DOE site would provide technology-neutral support through public-private partnership arrangements. DOE has safety oversight authority, unique capabilities, experts, and experimental facilities that could dramatically reduce the barriers, costs, and delays involved in nuclear demonstrations. By controlling and defining many of the costs and unknowns, the testbed site would enable private investment in prototype reactors and pre-commercial projects. Not only could this unlock a great deal of private capital, it would enable U.S. innovators to move forward domestically rather than turning to foreign partners. In addition to demonstration activities, another crucial step in commercialization is licensing with the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. The NRC's experience base is with light water technology, and it has established a clear pathway for licensing a light water reactor. The process for an advanced reactor is far less established and thus introduces a level of uncertainty that can be paralyzing to private investment. Advanced reactors don't need a shortcut or less stringency, but they need a well-defined, predictable process. This is another area where the model could be adjusted to enable more private and venture investment. One such adjustment would be introducing stages of licensing. The current NRC certification process is all or nothing, without interim levels of approval or acceptance. By comparison, the FDA has orderly stage gates with preclinical trials, phase 1, 2, and 3 trials, and finally a new drug application. A drug can pass or fail at each stage, and this provides a clear signal to investors that a technology is meeting or failing criteria set by the regulator. It certainly isn't trivial to stage NRC licensing. The NRC would need resources and will, but it would provide a more workable process for investors in new technologies. In developing such a staged pathway, it would be important to collaborate closely with the innovators and investors who would use this process. There are a variety of other actions that DOE and NRC could take to develop a risk-informed and technology-neutral licensing framework that would be more applicable to advanced reactors. NRC and DOE have both taken steps in that direction, but more resources and a clear mandate would ensure more timely action. Nuclear power could play a very large role in addressing climate change as well as other global air emissions concerns. Private investors recognize that and are ready to move forward with advanced reactors if we can modernize the commercialization model. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. I would be pleased to respond to any questions you might have today or in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Finan. The chair now recognizes Mr. McGough.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Mike McGough, and I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at NuScale Power, the leading developer of American Small Modular Reactor, or SMR, nuclear technology. I want to thank the committee for the opportunity to testify before you today, and I want to particularly thank Representative Bonamici for her welcome and introduction. I'd also like to thank Representative Vesey and Representative Weber for their continued interest and support for our work. For 15 years, our innovative company, based in Corvallis, Oregon, and majority owned by the Fluor Corporation, has been advancing a unique SMR design that can play a significant role in our future needs for baseload, carbon-free electricity generation. The NuScale design offers the safest nuclear technology available today. As you see on slide 1, we have solved one of the most vexing problems of the nuclear industry with a design approach that we call the triple crown of nuclear safety. In the event of a station blackout resulting in a complete loss of electricity, comparable to what occurred at Fukushima, The NuScale power module shuts itself down and cools for an indefinite period of time with no electricity, no operator action required, and no additional water other than an existing 8 million gallon pool. This is possible because the NuScale design eliminates many of the electrically driven pumps, motors, and valves that large reactors rely on to protect the nuclear core. Instead, our reactor is safely cooled using 3 simple properties of physics: convection, conduction, and gravity to drive the flow of coolant through the reactor. Slide 2 presents a visual description of this natural circulation cooling process, and I'm happy to provide a more detailed description of this process during the question and answer session. Our deployment characteristics are unique, and as you can see on slide 3, the NuScale power module is dramatically smaller than today's pressurized water reactors. It can be factory manufactured and transported to a site via rail, truck, or barge. Our sites are scalable. As I mentioned earlier, each site can accommodate up to 12 NuScale power modules. Therefore, the amount of electricity at a site is scalable to between 50 and 600 megawatts based on site needs. Continued support from Congress and the DOE is critical to our progress. Tomorrow will mark the 1-year anniversary of NuScale's selection as the sole awardee for funding in Round 2 of the DOE's Small Modular Reactor Grant Program, recently authorized by Congress. The SMR program provides NuScale with the vital cost-shared funding in support of the continued design of our reactor, as well as the cost of NRC's review of our license application. NuScale may receive up to $217 million of matching funds over 5 years. Of the 2 grant recipients under this program, we are the only developer proceeding at full speed towards near-term commercialization. Successful licensing of SMR technology depends on sustained congressional support through continued appropriations for this program, and we ask that you continue to prioritize this work. One of the highest risk components remaining in our project is the uncertainty of the time and the process for NRC licensing. In order to meet our customers' urgent needs, we must be in position for commercial operations in 2024. NuScale has been engaged with the NRC on pre-application review efforts since April of 2008. We expect to submit our complete application in the second half of 2016, and the NRC plan reflects a 39-month review schedule. We are waiting for the NRC to issue the NuScale design-specific review standard, which will establish the basis for our technology review. Because of the unique technology, to ensure timely completion, it is important that we have a team of NRC staff dedicated to reviewing the NuScale application. NuScale expects a robust market demand for our technology and a line of sight to our first dozen projects. We are in active negotiations for our first project, known as the Utah Associated Municipal Power Systems Carbon-Free Power Project, which will be sited in Idaho. We expect to deliver our first project to the owner for a price of about $3 billion, with subsequent plants in the range of $2.5 billion. Energy Northwest has joined this effort, and the company holds first right of offer to operate the project. The NuScale SMR is a key part of our nation's energy future. We appreciate your past support, and we ask that you continue to prioritize the development of SMR nuclear technology. Thank you.
I thank the witness, and the chair now recognizes our next witness, Dr. Dewan.
Thank you, Chairman Lummis, Ranking Member Swalwell, and members of the subcommittee. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk with you all today about the future of nuclear energy and the best ways for our country to retain its superiority in nuclear technology. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Transatomic Power, a nuclear reactor design startup based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We're developing an advanced nuclear reactor that can consume nuclear waste, reducing its radioactive lifetime while generating enormous amounts of electricity. In addition to Transatomic, there's a flourishing of other advanced nuclear reactor designs in this country that can safely produce very large amounts of carbon-free electricity with minimal waste. However, this great technology will only be useful if we can find a way to develop and commercialize it. Currently, the largest barriers are the following. First of all, the lack of a clear regulatory pathway for advanced reactor development in the United States. And secondly, the lack of facilities for prototyping advanced reactor designs. The commercial regulatory structure in the U.S. is currently set up only for light water reactors. The system works well for these designs, but it needs to be broadened to successfully encompass advanced reactors as well. Informal estimates suggest that it would take approximately 20 years at a minimum before such a regulatory pathway for advanced reactors would be available in the United States. And furthermore, there's a great deal of uncertainty in how much regulatory approval will cost the company commercializing the design. Estimates for licensing just a prototype facility through the NRC, this is just a prototype facility, range from $200 million to $500 million. And there are no good estimates for the cost of a commercial license for an advanced nuclear reactor. This high cost and long timeline, and furthermore, the uncertainty in the estimates of the cost and timeline, effectively block large-scale private investment in new nuclear reactors, because no investor would want to put money into a project if they don't have a good sense of when they're going to get a return or how much it'll cost at the beginning. The current system incentivizes reactor designers to develop their first projects outside of the United States. And in fact, this has already happened. Some existing nuclear reactor design companies are planning on building their first power plants overseas, in Canada or China or the Philippines, because they don't think it will be possible to build an advanced reactor in the U.S. under the current regulatory system. A good path forward would be to move to a set of technology-agnostic guidelines based on performance criteria that would be equally applicable to all reactors. A similar set of functional guidelines, functional regulations, were recently adopted in Canada, and they're driving significant advanced reactor progress in that country. Now, regulatory issues are closely tied to the ability to build prototype nuclear reactors. The great deal of uncertainty in the cost and timeline for regulating and licensing prototype nuclear facilities is a significant barrier to private investment. A clear way to solve this problem would be to establish a testbed facility, ideally at a national laboratory site, for building demonstration-scale advanced reactors. This solution would require clarifying the existing rules that say it's possible to build and operate demo-scale advanced reactors at national laboratory sites under the auspices of DOE, without requiring an explicit license from the NRC ahead of time. NRC staffers could potentially be stationed at the site so they could observe the construction and operation of the facility. And as they do this, the NRC staffers would be building up the necessary expertise in the technology to license commercial-scale plants in the future. Developing a better regulatory pathway for advanced nuclear reactors is vital for this country. The United States currently has the best nuclear technology in the world, but I worry that this will not always be the case, especially if the most advanced reactor technology is forced to go overseas to be prototyped, licensed, and commercialized. A regulatory pathway for advanced reactors, coupled with the ability to more readily demonstrate reactor prototypes at national laboratories, will enable greater private investment in the suite of new nuclear reactor designs currently being developed, and allow the U.S. to retain the extraordinary benefits of this new nuclear technology. Thank you all so much. I'm very, very glad to have the opportunity to testify here today, and I'm really looking forward to answering your questions.
And we're looking forward to having a little bit of time to do that. So I'm glad that things on the floor are slowing down. Our final witness is Mr. Lipman, and he was nodding his head during some of the other presentations, so I'm looking forward to hearing his remarks. You are recognized, Mr. Lipman. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Swalwell, and other members of the committee. I am Dan Lipman, Executive Director at the Nuclear Energy Institute. Before joining NEI, I spent more than 31 years with Westinghouse, and a period of that time included leading the new build program, the new reactor business that brought the AP1000 advanced design nuclear reactor to market. We are keen to address the interests of the committee. I think they are critical, particularly because they touch on three significant areas. These issues are global, these issues are long-term, and above all, they impact U.S. leadership. The statistics on nuclear energy contribution in the U.S., both the Chair and Dr. Lyons underlined, I don't need to repeat them, but I will say that nuclear power plants provide a number of other key attributes, including price stability, technological diversity, and grid stability. Nuclear fuel is not dependent on the weather or consistent fuel delivery by trucks or pipelines. During this year's polar vortex, while other electricity sources face the challenge of crowded pipelines or even frozen fuel, the nation's nuclear power plants operated at a daily average capacity of 95%, and no other source of electricity came close to achieving that level of reliability. In addition to being clean, safe, and reliable, nuclear power in the United States is a tremendous demonstration of U.S. leadership. U.S. reactor designs are the basis for many of the world's nuclear power programs, yet today we face very serious competition in world markets. Major growth in nuclear energy in the near term will be outside this country. And so we need to develop a program that meets this competition head-on by improving our export control processes, establishing 123 trade agreements with prospective countries, reauthorization of the Export-Import Bank, and importantly, as you've heard today, continuing to develop the safest and most advanced nuclear technologies here. And while we need to compete abroad, leadership means we need to be building and developing more nuclear at home. Maintaining nuclear energy shares require the equivalent of 12 new nuclear power plants by 2025, and if today's nuclear power plants retire at 60 years of operation, we'll need 20 plants by 2030 and 45 by 2035. So subsequent license renewal is critical. It is a strategic imperative to deploy small modular reactors in the early to the mid-2020s, followed by more advanced Generation 4 designs in the 2030s and beyond. Small modular reactors allow capacity additions at smaller increments, and advanced reactors will likely have a very higher level, an even higher level of inherent safety, and may be able to serve a vital role in management of spent fuel from today's light water reactors. Commercialization of advanced nuclear reactors will best be achieved through an appropriate program that identifies these technologies, facilitates their deployment, and as you've heard, the most significant challenges facing both SMRs and Generation 4 reactors are financing and licensing. The time, the uncertainty, and the cost required to design, license, and build new reactors is daunting. You heard from Secretary Lyons that at NEI we're establishing, similar to our SMR working group, an advanced reactor working group chaired by the CEO of Southern Nuclear Operating Company to develop an industry vision of a long-term sustainable program that will support the development and commercialization of advanced reactors. We must establish the portfolio of technologies necessary to provide clean, reliable baseload electricity for the 2030s and beyond. Federal and state governments and industry must address, in the balance of this decade, so in the next 5 years, the financing and regulatory challenges facing these advanced nuclear technologies. Both SMRs and Gen 4 reactors need to have their barriers reduced for deployment and eventually, as you've heard, for overseas markets. We need innovation, creative approaches to ensure the availability of capital and regulatory certainty and closure required. Business as usual will not get the job done. Thank you.
I thank the witnesses, and we will now open our round of questions. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Weber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. is Dewan, is that how you say that?
Yes, it's Dewan. Thank you.
Okay. Transatomic has proposed a molten salt reactor, non-light water design that will run on nuclear waste and reach higher levels of efficiency, higher temperatures. I know I'm telling Noah about the flood here. but I'm going somewhere. And Dr. Lipman just referred to, two problems being financing and licensing. NRC requires approximately 20 years to develop a regulatory pathway for an advanced reactor design like Transatomic. And your company is in that process. Now, according to Business Week, they had an article on Bloomberg Business Week, I think it is, on your company. Did you start, how long have you been doing this? Let me just ask you that question.
I started the company with my co-founder back in 2011, actually.
Okay.
For the first 2 years, it was when we were in the middle of our PhD program. So we've been full-time just for the past year and a half.
Okay. And your co-founder's name?
Mark Massey.
Mark Massey, okay. So for you guys, has it been a nightmare? I mean, there is no clear, predictable legal process and permitting process. How has that worked for you?
It's been tricky, to say the least, and thank you so much for this question. It's an issue that I spend a great deal of time thinking about. We believe that ultimately we will be able to find a regulatory pathway for this type of advanced reactor technology in the U.S. on timescales shorter than the 20 years currently estimated. We feel it's a necessity if the U.S. wants to take advantage of this molten salt technology that was first developed in this country back in the 1960s. Though it is a very tricky path. Currently, there is no way for us to build a prototype facility or move beyond the laboratory scale work that we're currently doing. We want more than anything to do this in the U.S., but we've been forced to keep an open mind with respect to the other pathways we could take.
Canada was mentioned earlier.
Yes.
According to the Bloomberg Business Week, y'all started in February of 2010. Y'all decided to fix what's wrong with nuclear reactors.
Back in spring, summer 2010 was when we first started thinking very broadly about advanced reactor designs and how you can do such extraordinary things with all different types of advanced reactors, achieve very high burnups, produce very little waste.
When did you form your company?
We incorporated in spring of 2011, actually on the 25th anniversary of Chernobyl.
So 3.5 years ago.
Yes.
So in 3.5 years, is there anything in that process you do differently? Can you be very specific about dealing with our agencies?
So at this point, we've been having informal conversations with people at the NRC. We haven't started we're not in a position yet to start an application process. We're not in a position yet to even start the pre-application process. That's also the point at which it starts being very, very expensive to engage the NRC once you move beyond the informal conversation.
And I don't mean to pry, you may not be at liberty to answer this, but have you sought out investors?
Oh, yes. We've actually raised a round of funding so far from Founders Fund based in San Francisco. They're actually one of the main early investors in SpaceX, so they're one of the few VC firms out there that's interested in longer time scale, higher risk, higher reward technology. Otherwise, for the reasons I mentioned in my testimony, it can be very, very tricky to get private investment in nuclear.
And have they been reluctant because of the permitting and that process?
A large number of the VC firms that we talked to before we started connecting with Founders Fund, a lot of the other firms were very concerned about the regulatory uncertainty. And it's not so much the high cost. I feel like if I could tell potential investors it will cost $200 million just for the regulatory piece, in addition to however much it would cost for engineering of the prototype plant, I feel like I could get private investment for that. But when I talk to people and I say, well, it could be $200 million, it could be $100 million, it could be $600 million, I honestly don't know. There are no data points. No one knows.
No predictability.
That isn't something that I can sell to anyone.
We hope to be able to help with that. Now I yield back.
I thank the gentleman, and I am going to ask some questions. We have been called to votes, but I think that if you will each try to limit your answers to about a minute, you should have an opportunity to respond. I'd like to ask each of you the same question. I'm going to start with Dr. Finan and go down the line. And I would like to ask you, what can Congress do to assist your efforts to improve licensing processes, to expedite licensing processes, and to help the private sector move forward with potential technologies in this area under discussion today? Dr. Finan?
Thank you. The NRC operates on a fee recovery basis. They're required to recover 90% of their costs from fees that are paid by operating reactors, and those fees aren't funds that can be used to support regulatory research into an advanced reactor process. So one thing that Congress could do would be to allocate funds to NRC that would be outside of that fee recovery basis, so that they could work on this R&D work and work on developing the groundwork that's needed for innovation and advanced reactor licensing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mr. McGough, same question.
Thank you. So the licensing process that Dr. Finan referred to, we've been involved with the NRC since April of 2008. So we've been paying those bills for a very long time, and they're very expensive. To receive our design certification through that point, when it'll be completed in about 2020, we'll have spent $530 million on that process. So it's very expensive. We need the NRC to issue to us something referred to as a design-specific review standard, which is basically a handshake about how our application will be reviewed. Without that, we are developing an application somewhat blindfolded. Without a pre-agreement about when we submit it in this fashion, it will be expeditiously reviewed on the agreed-on 39-month schedule. And that predictability is better than no predictability, as Dr. Dewan referred to. So it's really important to us that we have the NRC dedicated proper resources reviewing those applications on an expeditious fashion.
Thank you, Mr. McHugh. Dr. Dewan, same question.
Thank you. And my answer ties in very closely to what Dr. Finan and Mr. McGough are saying, that what would be most useful would be to encourage the NRC to move to a more staged licensing process, similar, as was said before, to a pharmaceutical biotech licensing process, where there are multiple stages where designs can get early feedback on the viability of their design through a regulatory process in the U.S.
And Mr. Lipman, finally, same question.
Yes. I concur especially with Dr. Finan's suggestion, and I might add to it, and that is that Congress could establish budget line item that is particularly allocated to the review of advanced reactor concepts. There's simply not the mandate for NRC to do that based on the model that Dr. Finan suggested. So that very concretely would be helpful. Also, the continued investment in many of the programs Dr. Lyons mentioned, and some he didn't, or one he didn't, is the LWR Sustainability Program, which allows for advanced work in materials and other aging phenomena that keep our current fleet going. And lastly, perhaps investment under the laboratory system of advanced materials test reactors. You know, all of these technologies very much often depend on behavioral properties of metallurgical phenomena. And so reactors at the national laboratories that can test these things, the data from which go into licensing and can expedite the licensing process. So focus on the fleet and focus on the advanced concepts. Thank you.
I thank this panel and these witnesses for your valuable testimony, and also the members for their questions. The members of the committee may have additional questions for you, and you may receive those questions in writing. We would ask you to respond in writing. The record will remain open for 2 weeks for additional comments and written questions from members. Hopefully you will not get them on the 24th of December, so you will be responding to questions on Christmas Day. The witnesses, with our gratitude, are excused. I would like to ask the staff to prepare a written summary of the last responses that these witnesses gave to that question about what we can do, and give it to Chairman Smith. So going forward, he will know what was recommended for future action or attention by this committee going forward. Again, I want to thank our panel, and I want to thank you for your wonderful work on our nation's behalf in this important area of research and development. With that, this hearing is adjourned.
Good job.